I always prided myself on being the perfect family man. As a businessman, I poured my heart and soul into my work, but I never let it interfere with my family time. I met Emily in college. She was the light of my life, and together we built a beautiful family. We have 2 sons, Alex and Jacob, and 2 daughters, Emma and Sophie. My life seemed perfect, or so I thought. That day started like any other. I woke up early, kissed Emily and the kids goodbye, and headed to the office. I had a few important meetings lined up, but I always made sure to carve out time to check in with Emily and the kids. They were my world. Around noon, I received a call from my brother Mike. Mike had always been the black sheep of the family, never quite finding his way. Despite his lack of direction, I had always tried to support him. We spoke briefly, and he mentioned he needed a place to crash for a while. Emily had always been kind-hearted and agreed to let him stay with us until he got back on his feet. I had to leave the office early that day because one of my meetings got canceled. I decided to surprise Emily and the kids by coming home early. As I drove home, I thought about how lucky I was to have such a wonderful family. But nothing could have prepared me for what I was about to walk into. I arrived home and noticed Mike's car parked outside. Good, I thought. He's here already. I walked in quietly, hoping to surprise everyone. The house was unusually quiet, which I found odd since our home was always bustling with the sounds of kids playing and Emily's cheerful chatter. As I walked up the stairs, I heard noises coming from our bedroom. My heart pounded in my chest as I approached the door. I pushed it open, and there they were, Emily and Mike in bed together. The sight of my wife with my brother was a punch to the gut, knocking the wind out of me. For a moment, I couldn't move. I stood there, paralyzed by shock and betrayal. Emily's eyes widened when she saw me, and she quickly covered herself, but the damage was done. Mike scrambled to his feet, looking guilty and ashamed. I wanted to yell, to scream, to demand an explanation, but all I could do was stand there, feeling the ground crumble beneath me. "What the hell is going on?" I finally managed to choke out. My voice was barely a whisper, filled with pain and disbelief. Emily started to cry, and Mike looked down, unable to meet my eyes. "It's not what it looks like," she stammered, but her words felt hollow and meaningless. "Not what it looks like? Then what is it?" I demanded, my voice rising with each word. "I come home to find my wife and my brother in bed together, and you tell me it's not what it looks like?" Mike finally spoke up. "I'm sorry, man. I don't know what to say." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. My brother, the person I had always tried to help, had betrayed me in the worst possible way. And Emily, the woman I had loved and trusted with my heart, had shattered it into a million pieces. I turned and walked out of the room, unable to stay there any longer. I could hear Emily calling after me, but I didn't stop. I went downstairs, grabbed my car keys, and left the house. I drove aimlessly, my mind a whirlwind of emotions. Anger, hurt, betrayal, they all swirled together, making it hard to think clearly. I ended up at a park, sitting on a bench and staring into space. How could this have happened? I'd always been there for Emily, always made sure she and the kids were taken care of. What had I done wrong? Where had our marriage gone off track? Hours passed, and I finally decided to head back home. I didn't know what I was going to do or say, but I knew I couldn't avoid it forever. I had to face Emily and Mike and deal with the mess that my life had suddenly become. When I got back home, Emily was waiting for me in the living room. Her eyes were red and puffy from crying. Mike was nowhere to be seen, probably hiding somewhere in the house. "Can we talk?" Emily asked, her voice trembling. I nodded and sat down on the couch, keeping my distance from her. "Explain," I said, my voice cold and detached. Emily took a deep breath and began to speak. "It started a few months ago. Mike was going through a rough patch, and he started coming over more often. We got close, and one thing led to another. I'm so sorry, Jack. I never meant for this to happen." Her words felt like knives, each one stabbing deeper into my heart. "Why, Emily? Why did you do this?" "I don't know," she sobbed. "I felt lonely, I guess. You were always so busy with work, and Mike was here, and he understood. I couldn't listen to any more." I stood up and walked out of the room. "I need time to think," I said over my shoulder. I spent the next few days in a daze, barely able to function. I went through the motions of work, but my mind was constantly replaying that scene in our bedroom. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Emily and Mike together, and the pain was unbearable. I tried to talk to my kids, but I couldn't find the words. How do you explain to your children that their mother has betrayed you? That their uncle, who they loved and looked up to, had torn their family apart? Eventually, I knew I had to make a decision. I couldn't keep living like this, in a state of limbo. I had to confront Emily and Mike and figure out what to do next. I called a family meeting. Emily, Mike, and the kids all gathered in the living room. The kids looked confused and worried, sensing that something was wrong. "I need to talk to all of you," I began. "There's something you need to know." I took a deep breath and told them everything. I watched the expressions on my children's faces change from confusion to shock to sadness. Emma and Sophie started to cry while Alex and Jacob looked angry and betrayed. "Why, Mom? Why did you do this?" Alex demanded, his voice filled with hurt. Emily tried to explain, but her words fell flat. The kids didn't want to hear her excuses. They felt just as betrayed as I did. After the kids went to bed, I sat down with Emily and Mike. "We need to figure out what happens next," I said. "I can't stay in this house right now. I need some time to think." Emily nodded, tears streaming down her face. "I understand. I'll do whatever it takes to make this right." Mike looked at me, guilt and regret etched on his face. "I'm so sorry, Jack. I never meant for this to happen." I didn't respond. I couldn't. I stood up and walked out of the room, grabbing a bag and packing some clothes. I needed to get away, to clear my head and figure out what to do next. I checked into a hotel and spent the next few days in solitude, trying to process everything that had happened. I thought about my kids and how this would affect them. I thought about my marriage and whether it could be salvaged. And I thought about Mike and the betrayal that cut deeper than I ever thought possible. One night, as I lay in bed, I realized that I needed help. I couldn't deal with this on my own. I called a therapist and scheduled an appointment. I needed someone to talk to, someone who could help me navigate the storm of emotions I was feeling. The first therapy session was hard. I poured out everything I had been holding inside, and it was like a dam bursting. The therapist listened patiently, offering support and guidance. She helped me see that it wasn't my fault, that I hadn't done anything to deserve this betrayal. As the weeks went by, therapy helped me start to heal. I began to see a way forward, a path that would lead me out of the darkness. I still had a long way to go, but I was starting to feel like myself again. Eventually, I knew I had to talk to Emily again. We needed to figure out what was best for the kids and for ourselves. I called her and asked her to meet me at a coffee shop. When she arrived, she looked tired and worn out. I could tell she had been struggling too. We sat down and talked, really talked, for the first time since that day. "I've been seeing a therapist," I said. "It's helping me a lot. I think you should see someone too." Emily nodded. "I will. I want to make things right, Jack. I want to do whatever it takes to fix this." "I don't know if we can fix this," I admitted, "but we can try. For the kids' sake, if nothing else." We decided to go to couples therapy together. It was a difficult and painful process, but it helped us start to rebuild our relationship. We talked about the issues that had led to the affair, about the feelings of loneliness and neglect that Emily had felt. Slowly, we began to find our way back to each other. It wasn't easy, and there were times when I wanted to give up, but I knew I had to try, for the sake of our children, for the sake of the love we had once shared. As for Mike, I couldn't forgive him. Not yet. Maybe not ever. I told him he needed to find somewhere else to stay, that I couldn't have him in my life right now. He understood and left quietly, promising to give me space and time. The kids struggled with the changes, but they were resilient. They leaned on each other and on us, and slowly, we began to heal as a family. Months passed, and life started to find a new normal. Emily and I were still working on our relationship, but we were in a better place. The trust was slowly being rebuilt, brick by painful brick. One day, as we sat on the porch watching the kids play, Emily took my hand. "Thank you for giving us a second chance," she said softly. I squeezed her hand. "It's going to take time, but I believe we can get through this." She nodded, tears in her eyes. I believe that too. But no matter how hard we tried, the betrayal lingered like a dark shadow over everything. Despite the therapy, despite our efforts, I couldn't shake the feeling of betrayal. The image of them together etched permanently in my mind. The trust was gone, and no amount of therapy could bring it back. One evening, I sat Emily down. "I've tried, Emily, I really have. But I can't get past this. I can't forgive you," I said, my voice heavy with sadness. She looked at me, tears welling up in her eyes. "I understand, Jack. I'm so sorry. I wish I could undo it all, but I can't. I think it's best if we end this now, for both of us and for the kids," I said, my voice breaking. Emily nodded, tears streaming down her face. "I'll do whatever it takes to make this as easy as possible for the kids." I contacted a lawyer and filed for divorce. I decided to sue for full custody of the children, with Emily having visitation rights only a few times a month. I also decided to fight for all the property, believing it was the best way to ensure stability for the kids. The divorce process was grueling and painful. Emily and I tried to keep things civil for the sake of the children, but there were times when emotions ran high. The kids struggled with the changes, but I made sure to be there for them, to support them and reassure them that everything would be okay. Mike tried to reach out to me several times, but I refused to see him. I couldn't forgive him for what he had done. He had betrayed me in the worst possible way, and I didn't want him in my life anymore. I sold my business, deciding to devote my life to my children. They needed me more than ever, and I wanted to be there for them, to help them heal from the pain and confusion that the betrayal had caused. Life after the divorce was difficult, but I found strength in my children. They were my world, and I was determined to give them the best life possible. I focused on being the best father I could be, making sure they knew they were loved and supported. As time went on, we began to find a new sense of normalcy. The pain of the betrayal never fully went away, but it became a part of our story, something that had shaped us and made us stronger. I knew I had made the right decision for myself and for my children. In the end, it wasn't just about moving on from Emily's betrayal. It was about rediscovering who I was and finding the strength to build a new, fulfilling life. And in that journey, I found a deeper sense of purpose and a renewed commitment to my children. They were my everything, and I was ready to face whatever the future held, with them by my side.